Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be talking about a new policy Steam has made for DLC content and basically a subcategory of DLC, which is season passes, which kind of makes sense now that I say it out loud. But we are on PC Gamer today, and article is by Elliot Gould. Thank you for the article and I appreciate it. It will be linked down in the description below if you want to read along or just check it out for yourself. The title goes, Steam has changed its policy on DLC content and season passes, so now players are entitled to proper compensation. If future plans fall through, customers will be offered a refund for the value of unreleased DLC, which is a really good policy. The rules have changed, and the rules have literally changed this time because this is part of their guidelines, and it's going to be enforceable through the Steam client itself and through refunds if you don't deliver on what you said the DLC was going to be. Now, there probably is going to be some leeway of like, what does this mean? What does that mean? But that'll have to be figured out. There's been a significant change as to how Steam will require games to advertise expansion packs or DLC on the platform. The new guidelines clearly spell out what can be classified as new extra content and how publishers and developers should handle this future content to ensure that it has actual that it actually benefits customers. By offering a season pass, you are promising future content, the guideline says. In the process of launching a season pass, you'll be asked to commit to a launch time for each content release in the season pass. That launch timing is a commitment to both customer and Steam. If you aren't ready to clearly communicate about the content, including each DLC and when each DLC will be ready for launch, you shouldn't offer a season pass on Steam. This does kind of make sense. There has been a lot of weird things happening on Steam recently. When I say recently, in the past couple years, for DLCs of games and season passes of games. And it's been really strange because I think this article says it in a different paragraph. But basically, season passes are just pre-ordering DLC, basically. It's pre-ordering content because you're buying a promise. And sometimes those promises are lies. And Steam is trying to fight against the lie part of it, I guess. It also spells out the risk of promising DLCs and the like to players. Devs don't just have to provide a launch time, but they need to work to fulfill that promise and release the game when originally intended. Selling a season pass has risks since you are promising the release of future content, and you have to commit to completing this content on time. If customers don't like the content you're releasing in the season pass or the timing of that content release, they'll be reflected in sales and reviews. Yeah, that is true. And I think the biggest problem is that like season passes in itself aren't necessarily bad in my opinion. The problem is that a lot of season passes go down into being a promise of content, not like, hey, this is season 1 of our content, and it's just like, and the problem is that it's future content. Because like season 1, yeah, it's true, season 1 can be a couple months or like a few months, but like it's when season 1 doesn't start until next year, or the season 1 season pass for a single player game is just small DLCs slowly released over time, and it's just a little strange. And I feel like it's the I think the one that reminds me the most of when Fallout 4 first came out and it had a season pass, and what it was just expansions or DLC, but it was just packaged like a season pass for some reason, because season pass is a hot buzzword at the time, and still is, to be fair, just not as much. Well, it's not too common. There are a few games out there that have stumbled at the hurdle of DLCs. The first DLC that Sea Science Skylines 2 released, the Beach Properties pack, managed to really rile up players who thought the $10 for some buildings and new trees were a complete ripoff. I mean, I would agree. That is a big ripoff. Then there's Stellaris, which has $200 worth of DLC. That's true. I mean, the problem with Stellaris is that the DLCs also fundamentally change the game. So some of the DLCs, it's like half DLC, half free content, if I remember correctly. So if you don't have the DLCs, you actually are getting a arguably worse or different experience than people who do, which is really strange. The sheer amount of content here can be tricky for players to untangle, and it's hard to know what is worth buying and what isn't. That is also true. I mean, that's why there's YouTube videos for like what DLCs you should own or shouldn't own or buy first and stuff like that. Because the season pass is effectively a DLC pre-purchase, yeah, that I did read it from this one. Creating a season pass on Steam has many considerations and restrictions as outlined in the documentation on pre-purchasing. For these reasons, we will not offer a season pass except in a few rare cases with partners with which we have well established relationships and have proven track records on Steam. This does make sense overall because I feel like the problem with season passes on people that Valve doesn't know basically is that it's also a potential hurt on their reputation because people are buying the game on Steam, and sometimes people don't have that separation of Steam isn't involved all the way when it comes to gaming. You know, they have control over the platform, of course, but you know, they can't force devs to do things. Well, they could, but you know what I mean. It takes a lot more. They can't, it's not good for them legally to have to constantly make exceptions. So having good flatline guidelines, unless you are an exception, which I'm sure like some of the big AAA companies are an exception because, you know, they're not gonna screw over Steam. So that's good. And it's better to have. I'm sure there's been some shady stuff that no one knows about or we don't know about season passes being sold for smaller games and them just being complete lies. And you can't refund that right now, or you couldn't refund that. Now you're going to be able to. Just like how there's a certain restrictions for different types of games on Steam. Like a free game, you can only have so many achievements because people used to have free games on Steam that would just give you tons and tons and tons of achievements to make a account look more legit so you could sell the account. Like stuff like that. To protect players further, Steam has also outlined the refund policy that games will have to adhere if it plans for a DLC or expansion end up falling through. We understand that game development doesn't always go as planned, and if you think that you aren't going to be able to release a DLC into the season pass by the quarter you promised, we'll allow you to self-reschedule the release date one time only during the season pass. You can also pick a new date up to 3 months later than you originally selected. If you cancel a DLC in a season pass, customers will be offered a refund for the value of unreleased DLC. That does make sense, and I'm glad they do let them reschedule it at least once. And I feel like this also makes it so other companies and dev teams will just be a little more realistic with the pipeline of how things work. Because I feel like a lot of the problems in the video game industry is just not proper management and not well scheduled things. I think some devs forget the fact that not everything is going to go to plan, and when you're making a video game, everything goes wrong. And I feel like it's weird that they don't think that sometimes, and they get kind of almost caught up in their own hype, and they forget that making video games can be very hard, and doing a pre-order basically of future content is really risky because what if it doesn't work out, especially if you give yourself a tight timeline. These are new guidelines for games wishing to make a season pass available for purchase on Steam. Now games must list all DLCs included in the pass, give a basic description for each DLC explaining to the player and what they can expect from them, and give a release date, which can be a quarter, a year, a season. Which can be a quarter and year, season and year are also acceptable. This also says to me that it's also because Steam is also letting a lot more free-to-play games on Steam, and I wonder if this is also a move for any of the Asian gacha games are coming on Steam, maybe, because they do season passes a lot, and you're probably going to have to protect people who don't know what these types of games are, but there are more and more gacha games getting really mainstream popular, like Genshin Impact and stuff like that, so I wonder if this is them trying to be a little bit more easier for devs to also put season passes and stuff like that in a free-to-play game, but that might just be me thinking about it too much because I don't think those games would necessarily need Steam, but I mean, being available on Steam probably doesn't hurt. Though this would be a problem for these devs because that means they have to be like very strict of what they're doing and describe what it's going to be, but I'm not sure. It's interesting to see. I'm very interested to see what happened behind the scenes for Steam to need to make these guidelines, because I don't remember. I mean, players can be upset about DLCs and expansions happening. I guess the Cities Skylines and stuff like is a good example too, but like it was never that big of a problem. I guess it's also kind of weird that it's interesting that it's mostly about the pre-order of the season pass, of buying a season pass and then like expecting content at that time. I wonder Does Steam allow you I'm pretty sure Steam allows you to refund pre-orders for actual games as well. So this might also just be them putting in a system that makes it so it's just like pre-ordering a regular full released video game just for new content in that video game. While this may not seem like a massive change and more of a clerical confirmation for devs and publishers, many players are still incredibly happy to see this change. They'll put a lot of work into making the experience better for their customers because they realize if they do that, customers respond by giving them money. A player says, "That's true. I've been doing it for 20 plus years now because they constantly keep getting better and better, more feature filled. Between this update to Steam's guidelines of DLC and GOG going all into one game preservation, PC gamers are certainly eating well now." Yeah, that is really cool. And the Steam, it is just a safeguard for players, which is always good. And it makes it so devs, can be more accountable. Not necessarily that they aren't accountable, but you got to be more realistic of what you're going to say. You know, and not just the devs, but also the marketing teams. Like, to be fair, most indie studios and even like AA studios don't necessarily have marketing teams, but this will be a good way to protect from the basically just lying. And the problem is that Steam has so many games uploaded to it every single day, basically. It's good to have a just written down guideline, and so there isn't any questions for basic mechanics of how this is going to work. If you're going to make a season pass, you need to say exactly what it has in it and when it's coming out, which is great. I do kind of wonder, so when it says quarter and year, I guess it means first quarter of 2024, for instance, or 2025, or fall 2025, or summer 2025. That makes sense. Let me just read this over again. If you think you aren't going to be able to release a DLC into the season pass by the quarter you promised, we allow you to self-reschedule the release date one time only during the season pass. Okay, so I wonder why it's only one time. So basically, if you have to delay it, make sure you can only delay it one time and release what you're going to release. You can pick a new date up to 3 months later than you originally selected. Oh, but you only allowed 3 extra months. It's interesting that they have this. So if you put summer 2025, you can only realistically put fall 2025 for a reschedule, because winter is probably too far away and you can't put 2026 at all, basically, if you put summer. I don't know about the 3 months because you don't know what's happening. Steam doesn't know what's happening behind the scenes. I kind of understand this in terms of a business perspective, but I do feel like the 3 months is a little weird. But then again, it is supposed to be for season pass stuff. So I do feel like you're not making an entire new game in a season pass generally. So it should be easier to make in theory, though I do feel a little strange about the 3 months specifically, because the only one time I can understand, but the 3 months feels a little restrictive. Like, it's hard to say. Then maybe this is me thinking double standard when it comes to you can only do it one time and the 3 month time limit. Like, maybe I should be doing both or none, but I do feel like the only one time is fine because you want to make sure it's like, no, if you want to try to do your best to commit to the date. But the 3 months does feel a little weird to me because you don't, like, what happens if someone's office gets flooded or something like that? It's like, I don't know. It feels a little strange to do something like that, to have the 3 months after the already only doing it one time. Because I feel like if someone's going to delay their season pass on Steam now, it's going to be for a good reason, because you have to really know when to commit for the date. And I just feel like it's a little strange that it's 2 restrictions, that it's a 2 restriction process of rescheduling it. But overall, I'm sure it'll be fine in general. So I'm just glad that this exists. It's honestly kind of funny that it didn't already exist, but I guess season passes is kind of a more modern thing, because before it was just release the DLC when it's ready. But now there's a lot of, I mean, to be fair, in this article itself, season passes are pre-ordering DLC, which is, when I say that out loud, is crazy, and it's kind of stupid, but it's just the way the market is nowadays, and Steam is updating itself for the modern video game purchasing meta. I guess. Thank you everyone for watching today's video. Let me know down in the comments if you think this is a good idea or if you think it's too restrictive or anything like that. I said it's weird that there's two restrictions. I kind of agree with the only one time. I'm not sure about the 3 months, but you know, it's their platform. They can do what they want. And it's great that they have this guideline to begin with, so that's good. I'd appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, like, comment, all that good stuff. Watch other videos if you like to do it. I do these videos 3 times a week on these news reports. I also do a podcast called Two Buds One Podcast if you like to check that out on the channel. If you like to check me on other places, I have a Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky if you'd like to check out any of those social media platforms. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Goodbye, everyone.